So one of our lecturers coined a term called Kikuyu Gothic, basically. So for a lot of the Gothic is a style of architecture, basically.
What was it that really drove the GRASP direction?
For me, a lot of the architectural firms locally were not really pushing the boundaries in this regard.
People building collapsing everywhere. So what do you think goes wrong?
It's a systemic issue across all sectors.
Okay. You have like a public repository of architects, so I can go and look up and find this person. This is their track record.
Yes, there is. So there's the BORAQS website, boraqs.or.ke, I believe.
What kind of accountability structure should be in place now that is not holding people accountable?
The Board of Registration, for instance, they need to address the issue of architects who are not doing their job.
Have you had to, disagree with a client and say, I don't want that project?
Yes, we do. I normally make it very clear to our clients, we walk away. Money isn't everything. For us, reputation matters more.
Yes, welcome to yet another episode of SF Pod, and today we have a very wonderful guest. And one of the hardest things to navigate is when systems look solid on the surface, but they are crumbling underneath. So today we are going to discuss what exactly goes wrong and why. So we have a very good guest today, Mr. Gurmukh. Welcome to the episode today, and just beyond titles, who are you and what do you actually do?
Okay, thanks for the introduction. So my name is Gurmukh Panesar. I'm principal architect at GRASP Design Limited. I'm also vice chair at the Kenya Green Building Society. So GRASP Design is a multidisciplinary architectural firm. I mean, we offer interior design, architectural design services, acoustic design, project management, a slew of other related services as governed by the CAP. Yeah.
Okay, interesting. Malika, anything?
Right. So I'm very interested to know, Gurmukh, that, what challenges did you see in the market space that you thought GRASP is able to fix this? Let's get into the market. Let's, break any kind of routines that we've seen. What was it that really drove the GRASP direction?
Okay, so my background has always been in fine art. I've always been very expressive in that sense. And always liked thinking outside the box, basically. And for me, a lot of the architectural firms locally were not really pushing the boundaries in this regard. So you'd have, and competing globally. So the key thing is pushing boundaries from a design perspective, but also competing globally from a standards perspective, making sure that whatever you're offering is at par or better than what international firms offer. Why can't a Kenyan firm, compete against international firms? It should be able to. So for me, that was the ethos, number one. Number two was also to provide a space where there would be growth potential for the rest of the team. That's why GRASP is not based on my name. So it means to fully comprehend design. That was the origin of GRASP. And again, we like exploration. The team is very hands-on. We have a very good studio culture. And the whole goal is to kind of push the boundaries of what's possible in the region and beyond.
That's amazing. And actually, Sam, we were discussing the fact that the inspiration behind different builds in Kenya, it always feels very westernized, right? Like there's one aesthetic we've seen plenty of times. So especially with commercial design, you've been part of like amazing projects, even with Microsoft and their presence in the country and beyond. So what kind of aesthetic is just exhausted? Like, what have you seen done too much now?
Okay. So one of our lecturers coined a term called Kikuyu Gothic, basically. So for a lot of the Gothic is a style of architecture, basically, a medieval kind of architecture style from Europe. And again, there's a style called postmodernism, where I believe too much happens on the buildings, and I believe that's happened too much, in my opinion. So you're right. People need to respect that our climate is different, our cultures are different, and and design accordingly. So it's a very hard question to answer. What is African architecture? You know, and personally, I mean, as a firm, we don't like taking it literally. So we like exploring the roots of it. So, for example, for Microsoft that you mentioned, the inspiration was kind of what ties together all the tribes within Kenya and the region. And one of the things is, you know, the crafts, so weaving, things like that. So that's why the whole reception area was kind of based off that. The reception desk is based off a Samburu head stool, you know, those kind of things. So there are ways to kind of incorporate this. And it's, I don't like doing it too literally. So I kind of like, you know, implementing it in a way where it's a bit more philosophical.
Okay. So let's talk about what usually goes wrong. So beyond the design, we've seen in the recent past that people are paying the price and of the cost of trusting people that they will do the right thing. And we've seen this in the recent past, you know, people building collapsing everywhere. So what do you think goes wrong? And what is it a regulatory issue?
It's a systemic issue across all sectors.
Okay.
So I'll start at from close to home, basically, from the architectural space now. The board needs to clamp down on architects who are signing off or submitting drawings to county, but are not involved in design, nor are they involved in supervision. So merely their name is on the board as a checkbox exercise, but there's no checks and balances on site. So typically the architect is a lead consultant on site, and they will ensure that there's quality control. If they see something's amiss, they normally pick it up and raise it, For example, a good architect would always insist that the structure engineer is carrying out cube tests for the concrete. And so these are not things that can be taken for granted. Okay. Unfortunately, the Board of Architects, BORAQS, has not been very active on this regard. They need to start punishing, making example of architects who've been, misusing this. And number two, obviously, there's other institutions who are also, part to blame. Okay. We have county kind of enabling this as well to a certain extent. Fine, they will have, engineers and architects sign indemnity forms. But it goes beyond that. I think from the approval process, they need to insist that the architects, even NCA needs to insist that the architects have supervision. They need to find systems to ensure that this supervision is happening basically on these sites. By the architects, by the engineers, and that all the relevant tests are being done. These tests are there for a reason. The cube tests are there to check whether, the concrete is of sufficient strength at 21 days, at 28 days, basically. And that's very important so that you know that the building is safe.
Okay.
Yeah.
So for an ordinary person, and I want to ensure that I have the right architect and all these things, do you have like a public repository of architects so I can go and look up and find this person, this is their track record?
Yes, there is. So there's the BORAQS website, boraqs.or.ke, I believe. You can check it out. Just Google Board of Registration of Architects. Over there, there's a list of, and it's a real-time registry, which means it's not out of date. When you pay for your dues, it automatically updates within the system. So it's a real-time repository for architectural firms, quantity surveying firms, and individuals and firms. So you need to ensure both are registered. And again, that is one step to ensuring that you're on the right path. But then also do a background check and make sure that the architect you're employing are involved in the design stage and supervision stage. I think that's a good way to ensure that you're in safe hands.
Do you think the public has all this information? They're aware?
No, unfortunately, there's not enough education on this issue. And also, you see what happens is even from a developer point of view, even the developers are not educated on this, to be honest. So you'd find there's a very prominent building in Westlands, which has been designed by someone who's not registered, right, as we speak. So I think the key thing over here is, in terms even as, let's say if you're investing in a piece of property, that's an apartment, right? Most developers will encourage you to buy off-plan early. However, in my opinion, if you put that in other investment classes and it earned you interest it'll probably cover that difference in cost. And you have a bit more peace of mind because you're not bankrolling the developer. You're buying it at a point where now you're seeing the built-up product and you can ask for the tests from the engineers. You can, do your due diligence and make sure it's been properly done. So you not put your money in and risking it all, basically. So I would advise customers to do it that way, actually. Yeah.
So that off-plan buying is a little bit more risky then, clearly.
Yeah, it depends also on the developers you're using. Some developers are reputable, so we're working with one developer for development in Langata, and the whole team is contractors, basically. The client team is contractors. So even even above and beyond our supervision, their internal quality control is excellent. So those kind of developers are very reputable, and with those developers, you can kind of count on them.
So how do you know? Because if you drive around Westlands, I think over 60% of billboards are upcoming properties and apartments and all that, and people are actually looking at this as an investment option. So what are 3 things that people should, be wary of before they engage in such initiatives?
Okay. So I think look out for a simple check. A very simple check would be go to the signboard, look up the architect. First of all, make sure that they're registered on They will be most probably, because the person who's stamping is registered. However, go to their website, do a bit of homework. If you find that they're well set up firm, they're actually involved in the design supervision of the project, more often than not, that project will be handled well.
Okay.
Where you find the person has zero presence, they're handling 30 projects and it's one person, then you can start asking questions. Yeah.
Okay.
So you need to do a bit of due diligence from your side as well. Same way when you're buying land, you have to go to your lawyers, do a search on it. Even when you're buying apartments, you need to do a search, make sure your architects, your engineers, it's a good team. Yeah. So do a bit of research on it. It's a desktop exercise. A few minutes on Google and you'll be able to find a lot of information.
Interesting.
Just to kind of lay the land, there's so many teams involved in any kind of construction. You've got your contractor, engineer, architect, designer, or architect and designer rolled in one. So can you tell us just a glimpse, a screenshot of like what teams generally are doing what function in a construction project? Okay.
So you have the client, could be a standalone client, could be a developer, serial developer. The client normally appoints an architect. The architect could then appoint as a consortium, basically under their wing, the structural engineer, mechanical, MEP engineer, mechanical, electrical, plumbing, and then the QS. There are other professionals as well. You'd have your land surveyor to ensure that your land is properly surveyed and your beacons are correct. You'd have environmental expert, EIA expert, basically for carrying out the NEMA submissions and making sure it's properly handled. And more complex projects have more consultants. So you eventually have, facade engineers, traffic engineers for projects which are like $35 million, $50 million and above. So I think the key thing over here is, architects would be in charge of design and supervision. They'd be kind of the lead consultants. The structure engineers are involved obviously with the structures, ensuring that the concrete work is done correctly, the steel bending is done correctly, concrete of sufficient strength is being used, those kind of things. The materials are correct, those kind of checks and balances. Okay. So ideally, engineers need to inspect during casts when they're casting the concrete. So, and then they need to have the results of the tests as well, the cube tests. So that's very important. And then the QS basically tracks the costs, make sure that the valuation is correct, and that the contractor is being paid for the work done. Again, this forms a good reflection. It forms transparency for the team or even the buyers. Basically, they have a good idea of what progress is on the project. And then you have the MEP engineers, very critical as well. So all your plumbing, all your firefighting services, all your electrical services, all your waste management, all of that is handled by the MEP engineers, your lifts. So that team together, and if it's a good team, you will get a very good product. Yeah. So if all the processes are followed, there's good checks and balances, then you have nothing to worry about.
In that situation and that scenario in a construction site, who actually is the boss? Because you see now there is a lot of moving parts, and more often than not, there are different companies that have different efforts, have different culture. So who is in charge of the site, and what should be done to ensure that there is smooth communication and everybody is pulling their weight?
Okay, so the multiple stakeholders, all of them have varying responsibilities. For the contractor, it's basically once the tender is awarded and they send the contract and they hand over the site, the contractor kind of is in charge of the site. So they can actually control who gets in, who gets out, health and safety, those kind of things. So the contractor is in charge of the site. Ultimately, obviously, the developer is in charge of the whole project. It's a difficult question to answer, but let me put it in another way. Let's talk about liabilities. Okay. So let's say the developer appoints or works with someone who's not registered. All liability shifts to the developer.
Okay.
Right? Let's say the developer hires an architect, but the architect doesn't do their job well, does not supervise, their name is on the board, they've not done anything. The person whose name is on the board is fully liable if they did not do that. Same for the engineers, if they did not do their jobs.
Okay.
Let's say now you have a perfect consultant team. The developer is okay. Architects have done their job, supervised. And the contractor is taking shortcuts. So, maybe they're faking cube tests and things like that. Obviously, there are ways to check this, and obviously there's reputation.
Okay.
But then the contractor is liable. So if the documentation and there's reasonable care carried out by the architect and the engineers, then the responsibility, the liability falls on the contractor.
Okay.
So again, there's clear lines of accountability for all of this. And I believe for all the cases that we've had for the collapsing buildings, we do need to hold some parties accountable. We cannot just have discourse saying, oh, this and that. Someone needs to be held liable for this.
Interesting.
So, of course, nobody would expect that we would have gotten to this juncture where so many collapses have occurred in the recent past, right? In terms of buildings.
This era, we are in the 21st century.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's so many moving parts, like you said, that should work together to constantly have checks at every point. What kind of accountability structure should be in place now that is not holding people accountable?
So again, for me, it's a very clear one. I'll give you a very good example. The Board of Registration, for instance, they need to address the issue of architects who are not doing their job. Same for IEK, right? EBK, sorry. Yeah, Engineers Board of Kenya. So in that regard, you would have the board basically deregistering architects who are signing off but are not supervising projects. That should be the easiest course of action. The moment you do that to 3 or 4 architects, you send a strong message to the industry that we're taking this seriously, and it'll deter other architects from doing the same, right? Number 2, NCA starts ensuring that, or finds a system to ensure that these architects are actually supervising correctly, or that the engineers are supervising correctly. Again, EBK does the same. Every party needs to do their job. County needs to also come and check, right? Ensure that developmental guidelines are not being exceeded. If approval is done for 10 floors, let's no one add in a few more floors. By the way, this is not Lego.
Yeah.
It's you have to every decision has implications.
Yeah.
So yeah, even moving a wall. Most people think it's just columns and beams, but even moving a wall loading is several kilonewtons basically on the line of which it's on. So moving a wall also has implications. So again, even if you're doing structural work, when we're doing fit outs, for instance, if we're doing bulk file storage, we have to get the structural engineer involved of the building. If we're doing a safe for a bank, we have to get the structural engineer involved because the loading of that safe is very heavy. Again, these kind of considerations, any good architect would know, and they would factor it in.
And you've talked about registered architects. Now, what about foreign architects coming in to consult on a project? Are they able to do that without being, passed by the board?
So let me. This is a very interesting discussion. So any foreign architect can come in, and I've got friends who are foreign architects or foreign trained, right? Internationally trained. You can come here. You'd need to do the 2 years work experience, sit the exams, then you can get registered. However, there's nothing stopping someone working in the UK, if you're based in the UK, but you must be registered in the UK, right? If you're based in South Africa, you're registered in South Africa. That's fine, but you're based there. What's wrong is if you're registered in the UK, for instance, and you're working from here, that is illegal.
Oh.
Yeah. I didn't know that.
Yeah, that is illegal. So, for instance, an architect registered in the UK, but is operating over here, providing architectural services within Kenya, is illegal. If they're operating from the UK, that's fine, because that's the jurisdiction, basically. However, the moment they step into the country, they must abide with the laws of the country, which means they must be registered before they can operate as an architect, on their own, that is. And it's very unfortunate. I know of 1 or 2 firms where you have no registered parties within the institution.
Yeah.
They've hired graduates, And after 2 years, these graduates will not be able to sit the exams because they're not working under a registered architect and they don't know any better, which is very unfortunate. So you're basically wasting the lives of our young graduates, basically, as you're moving forward.
Okay. So what do you think will be like, I know we have a lot of foreign architects coming in, they are saying, we do this in our country, this is how it's done. And I've experienced this personally, from, electrical to how do you put up a sprinkler. So what do you think should be the first steps that we need to do to ensure that this does not happen?
Everyone needs to follow the law, right? There are no sacred cows over here. Yeah. So in my opinion, and I've seen it as well. I've seen people purporting to be MEP engineers, right? Fine, they might be from abroad. They might know what they're doing. I don't care. Follow the law, get registered, right? And for me, there are a lot of clients who are actually insisting on registration, and they know what they're talking about. A lot of clients don't. So you'd find even multinationals are employing firms who are not registered, and they don't need better because they would expect. It's ridiculous to think that someone's operating here. And I'll give you a very good example. The authorities have been arresting lawyers, doctors who've been operating without licenses, right? However, the implication of an architect or someone purporting to be an architect over here would have, there'd be potential loss of hundreds of lives, yet no action is being taken. So I would implore BORAQS and DCI to do their job, basically. Get some of these people put behind bars. Yeah.
But let's talk about there is a notion of, I think I'll call it, most people think that foreign architects, foreign developers are superior to local. And if you go, and I'm sure one of the things when I was looking for an off-plan apartment, the question will be, who is the developer? Is it a Chinese developer, for example? And I don't have anything against Chinese developer. And if you hear they're from the Egyptian, they're from a different country, all of a sudden there is some level of confidence. So what's your take on that?
No, incompetence knows no race, knows no tribe.
Okay.
Right? I worked with very incompetent architects from France. I've worked with very incompetent architects from South Africa. I worked with very competent architects from Thailand. So for me, it's, again, from each country, you'll have good and bad, right? More often than not, if an architect is trying to venture out from their base country and aggressively looking abroad, right? It's either not very good at their job locally or they're too large and they're growing now, right? So you want to make sure it's the latter. But yeah, I mean, to be fair, I've seen a lot of international developers also cutting corners. So it's not just, as I said, incompetence knows no race. So whether you're local, I think it's a matter of ethics, principles. We do work internationally as well. So we've done work, within East Africa. We've done work outside Africa as well. So for us, we work with multinationals. We work in very serious organizations. And because of this, obviously the standards have to be to international standards, right? You can't. Your benchmark is there. It's not that you can't cut corners. You can't do things, jokali. You have to do them the proper way. So in my opinion, Kenya has the skills, right? We don't need to look outward. We have a lot of people who are cutting corners, definitely, but we do also have a lot of architects who are doing a good job in the country.
Okay.
Yeah.
And for the local talent and local companies, where do you think we're dropping the ball? Why aren't we competing? Like if you go to Egypt, for example, you find a lot of Kenyan company working there and doing development project. Where do you think we're dropping the ball?
Okay, I think it's again the quality mindset, right? So everyone's cutting corners, trying to take shortcuts. So it's very hard for you to establish yourself internationally. Let's say if you're doing that. And I'll give you a very good example. Because of the way we work, we've been able to acquire or get work basically internationally, and that's simply because of the quality of the work we do. Now, if you're looking at some of the issues that are affecting us, I think it's also part of the training, right? So, for example, in the universities, right? It's something I have seen the quality of the graduates coming out from the universities. More and more, they're not thinking outside the box. Yeah, they're really being boxed in. Yeah. They're being taught details from the 1960s and told this is the only way. No, university is there to encourage free thinking. Yeah.
Oh,
Interesting.
good point.
You know, Sam, if you and I had a plot and we decided you'll build your house here, I'll build mine here, what is the first step? Because a lot of people nowadays are saying, okay, we're not going to just get into this with the developers giving us an existing build. I have a plot. How about I develop here? Can that work?
Yes, of course.
And what would be the first step?
Yeah, so, okay, before you acquire the land, you'd get a lawyer to come and do a search, make sure that there's no multiple titles, it's not being grabbed, things like that. Number two, then you'd reach out, you might want to get a valuation done of the land. Again, it depends, right? If you have the finance, that's now financial structures. Number three is now engage an architect. He would advise you on, what's buildable, what's within the zoning guidelines, how much can you build, how much can't you build. So obviously the guidelines for each areas of Nairobi, it's. I know as much as there's chaos right now, that's being encouraged by corruption basically, because people are approving buildings which are not, suitable for those. The densities are not appropriate for those areas. So yeah, approach the architect. Then the architect can advise you accordingly. You need to hire this person. Once you bring the architect on board, and don't get intimidated by bringing an architect on board. Most of the times, the initial consultation with the architect is, at risk. They'll come and tell you, they'll guide you, at least for the first meeting. So go to the website or write to the board, write to AAK, which is the Architectural Association of Kenya, and they can also guide you on, who are good architects for what kind of project. So yeah, I think it's not as hard to get a good project done locally. It's just that a lot of people think that cutting corners is the only way of getting money in Kenya. But if you're doing things honestly, if you're doing things the correct way with principle and following the law, you can run a successful practice.
That point of, Malika has a piece of land, I have a piece of land, I build a very high-rise building, and then another person build the same. So who regulates that? Because we've seen literally window to window. like you and I can
shake hands from our buildings.
From a building. And it's absurd. It's insane.
Yeah.
I know it's driven by greed, but at the end of the day, it's the person who lives there. There are no lights. There are no, I know I own this land. I have the right to build on my land, but how do we go about it?
So there's a new building code in place. It's very good. Even the old building code had some provisions for this. So it's not very detailed on access to light. For example, in New York, there are certain angles you need to build at to allow for light to get in, right? So you can't just, every building has a right of light, basically, right light and ventilation. So the actually like views, you have to kind of build according to those angles that are prescribed. In Kenya, it's not that detailed, although it does have some setbacks which are governed by what the county dictates. Okay. For example, for Nairobi, you have a 6-meter building line. So basically from any internal road, it's 6 meters. You can't build there within your plot.
Oh, okay.
But within a larger road...
Is that being followed in your opinion?
By far, yes. It depends. Certain areas not. I know a lot of areas in Eastleigh it's not being followed. It depends. Certain areas is not being followed, but in a lot of areas it is. But yeah, it's basically 6 meters. You can build within that. Okay. That's for road expansion or services, things like that. For major roads, it's larger. It's 9 meters. Then there's setbacks from the back and the sides if you have operable windows to a habitable room. So if you have a room, you have to have a minimum offset of 2.4 meters.
Okay.
Right? So from the plot boundary. So let's say if you have windows facing a boundary, you have to be 2.4 meters from there. Another plot has to be there 2.4 meters from there as well. However, as an architect, we all know, even though the building code states that and the requirements from county state that, you need to also be sensitive about it. So when we're designing, we'll assume that, we don't want to block off light to the neighboring plot. So even the way we design is, and we design also that in thinking of a scenario where the neighboring plot may abuse this and may build edge to edge and not comply, or just might put a blank wall. And they're totally within their right to do so, as long as there's no rooms on that side.
Okay.
So you as a developer, you would need to kind of, again, hire an architect who can think through that and make sure that you're protected. So when we're doing the designs, we always try to put it in areas where it's the least risk. So your windows are facing the road, and you have internal courtyards or things like that to maximize light and ventilation. And we try to naturally ventilate all rooms, especially bathrooms and living rooms, dining. Your bedrooms as well need to be naturally ventilated and lit. They're very important. But you do get people building, edge to edge. It's unfortunate, but the county again needs to come in and guide on this.
So from what I'm getting, we need a lot of the counties to step in and to supervise this, to ensure that we are following the right practices, the right methods of building, and we are aligning with we are just being good neighbors to.
I think it comes at the approval stage. So the county needs to, what do you call it? The county needs to basically be more consistent in its approvals. I'll give you a very good example, because we don't give any kickbacks. We don't engage in any type of corruption. So when we submit to county, we normally hit very hard with a lot of comments. That's the way it should be, right? And we address those comments and we send it back. However, when we look at other projects, we realize that it's not the same goalpost. Other projects are flouting very many serious rules, and they're able to build, without any problems. So we always wonder how.
We all know how.
Yes.
There's no question mark that's left unchecked. But this whole issue is also a zoning issue, isn't it, when it comes to those distances?
Yeah, it is. It is. For example, you can't start building a 10th-floor building in Gigiri. There are certain areas that are, certain densities are allowed, certain areas where it's not allowed. But I think there needs to be also a bit of sensibility from the county, discretion. And apart from you see, like other countries, what they do is, it's not just black and white rules. The county sits and sees, does this fit in with the neighborhood character? Will it diminish the quality of life for the rest of the residents? Those kind of things. So it's not a matter of, it meets the building code, carry on. It's not that. They actually check, how is the building character? How does it look? Right? We have monstrosities over here, with glass facing the western facade, eastern facade, which are not ideal for Kenya and Nairobi. We need, well-shaded facades facing north and south. And that allows for you to get buildings which are not overheating, which don't require AC. You don't require AC in Nairobi. But the problem is, because the buildings are so poorly designed, you end up requiring AC because they're poorly oriented. All your western windows are facing open and unshaded. So the sun comes in direct. Even for office building, you'll find 2-3 meters of your office building can't be used because the architect didn't design it properly. So I think, the county does need to implement more stringent controls at the approval process, curb corruption, basically. Maybe outsource some of this to AAK or other independent parties if they want to minimize this. That might be an approach.
Interesting.
Yeah.
And speaking of Nairobi itself, the housing deficit is constantly growing year on year. Like, we have more and more people coming to live and work in Nairobi from across Kenya and even globally, and the houses are just not growing in the same rate at which people are coming in. And then you see the burden being taken on by the infrastructure. Your sewage, your roads, everything is compromised because there's just too many people. From like an architectural standpoint, is there a way that this can be addressed or somehow solved to an extent? Like, I know with Dubai, for example, they're expanding towards where the Expo City was as they kind of extend the limits of Dubai to accommodate more. I don't know if Nairobi would be able to do something like that, obviously.
So, and just to add on to that, do you think the solution is the way they're saying Nairobi needs to grow up vertically? Because we are practically building, vertical slums. So, because they're saying, the only solution is to grow up. So, what's your take?
I disagree with that. So we worked on the affordable housing standards for the Rwandan government. So affordable housing and is something we're quite interested in and something we're quite familiar with. Now, if you look at international best practices for any developing economy, you need at least, the maximum is 150 dwellings per hectare, right? That's the maximum density that is kind of allows social cohesion. Because affordable housing, I'll just touch on affordable first and I'll come to general housing. Affordable housing, if you do ground plus 10 floors. Again, lifts is a major concern. You can do ground plus 4 floors where you know your neighbor. I grew up in Marekani Estate, South B, and we all knew our neighbors. It was a very close-knit community. And that's a good example of, low-cost housing, basically, done well. So in my opinion, I think the key thing is we are building too dense, right? I feel that it might bring social problems later on in terms of, crime increase basically in some of the developments, and the multiple examples globally of very high density developments failing over time because of this. So I think we need to follow, you can still get high densities, but you don't need to go very high up, right? I think the two are not mutually exclusive. So it's important to allow for a good density, a relatively good density, 150 dwellings, so about half of what we're currently doing.
Okay.
And we'll still achieve that, but with sensible land use, with sensible infrastructure development. Again, now coming to, let's say now, urban and peri-urban areas, like for example, Westlands, the infrastructure needs to come in first, right? And then the zoning kind of updates with that, yeah? And then from there now, you see it's managed, the character is managed. That's how we get better cities. Unfortunately, that's not happening. It's chaos right now. So we do need the county planning department basically to ensure that the general master plan of Nairobi is, well thought out and implemented in a thought through manner.
How about I think Malika mentioned about the pressure of accommodation, where we are seeing, Nairobi is small, but the demand for housing is very high. That's why people will compromise and live in, inhabitable houses. So what do you think should be a solution to that?
I think it's a matter of also construction cost. So for the major challenge in Kenya actually is driving construction cost is heavy taxation. So, for example, aluminium is, I think it's, some timber products. They will attract, I think, 35% plus. It's almost 60-70% of duties and taxes.
Wow. Okay.
It's ridiculous. Finally, we want to encourage local construction. We want to encourage local manufacturing. I understand that. However, until that's done, we need to allow for this, or either subsidize or create lower cost of energy. You see, so something has to give.
Okay.
Yeah, you can't expect manufacturing without lower cost of energy. So it's all kind of tied in. It's a macro issue, and in terms of housing, I think middle to low income housing for the masses, right? It has to be good quality for it to survive and be there for generations. Okay. So I don't think we should rush to create it. I think we should plan and do it correctly, and ensure that our buildings don't have, or our cities don't have sprawl. So they're not sprawling outwards, because that makes it inefficient. So yes, we would need to create certain pockets of high density, but not everywhere. Yeah. So it's not that all places become high density, and it's not that every area remains green, leafy suburb. Okay. As you'd call it, right? Yeah. There are ways of doing high density and still maintaining character. Like look at the UK, for instance. You have a lot of townhouses which are kind of closely packed together, and they're still able to achieve relatively good densities. Yeah.
Interesting. Okay.
Based on that, which other counties within Kenya do you think have the potential to become the next metropolitan hub that Nairobi is?
Tough question. I'm not sure if there's any. It's a big challenge. Mombasa County also has major challenges basically when it comes to approval processes and things like that. Obviously the other cities in Kenya are all candidates, but then Nairobi is the economic hub of the country. So it'll take a lot to replace it, basically, in my opinion. There'd be supplementary or support cities, if you can call it that. And even outside Nairobi, you'd kind of have satellite cities that kind of, or nodes that should pick up and develop. Ideally, that's the approach. So you have, high density nodes, then you have trunk infrastructure, and high density nodes again. Again, I'm not a planner, but from the little I know, that's the best approach.
I think we're seeing a lot of cities within cities kind of developments coming up, right? Which is like a standalone mixed use fully kitted out city within itself, like within Nairobi. Let's say if you drive further out from Wayaki, we've seen those coming up in different areas where you can live, work, stay within this kind of pocket. How sustainable are those down the line?
They're not bad. Like things like Tatu and Tilisi. The advantage of those is you have a bit more control over the quality of the developments, right? So you'd find that the quality of developments in those controlled areas are a lot better. Yeah, it's not necessarily a bad thing. I think it should be encouraged, and if there are more developers who can do that, I think it'll be a good model.
But the cost, I think the cost element, those are not for the investment, and they're not for the majority of the people.
It depends. I would disagree. I mean, like Tatu has quite a few different products for various buyer classes. It has for high end. It also has affordable, relatively low income, middle income. So it has a whole range. I would say there's quite a few products there.
Okay.
Yeah.
So the blueprint of Tatu should, if it was to be replicated to different zones, should actually be a solution for housing.
It covers some of the gaps that are there in the industry, right? So it ensures that you have proper processes. They have their own internal approvals, like internal county approvals, and that helps to kind of weed out major issues. So it's not a bad approach in my opinion.
Yeah, I think like one area can have, let's say, 1-bedroom options, 2-bedroom options, villas and beyond. So like at different price points, I think it is accessible to different tiers perhaps. But diving further into buildings within Nairobi, riparian land has been a big issue. We've seen so many demolitions over the years. Suddenly things go quiet, then they pick back up. You hear again, this was on riparian land. It's a bit murky.
Yeah, there is even conversation of moving rivers.
Moving rivers.
So, riparians, I've worked on a couple of buildings along riparian way leaves. Then the best way to approach this is there's no set distance from the river, as most people assume. Someone will tell you, the riparian here is 12 meters. There's no such thing. What there is, and the correct way of doing this, is WRA, Water Resources Authority, needs to come in and peg the 50-year, 100-year flood line according to the risk profile of the river. They will come and peg it, put concrete pegs on the site, and give you the coordinates of that, right? And for example, if your site is very steep towards the river, your distance from the edge of the river will be shorter. However, if it's very shallow, right, and the floodplain it goes up a bit more, for example, you might have 20 meters at one side, which you need to leave, and the other side you might have 5 meters, based on the coordinates that you get from WRA. Now, this is your basis. So we always get WRA to come and peg the site. They'll give us the coordinates. We double check the coordinates. We make sure it's all okay. Then from there, now we build accordingly and fully compliant. So there are ways to do this. Again, a good architect would know this. Yeah,
I think that's the point. A good architect, because you will find that, and in your professional life, have you had the challenge of having to what the client is insisting? I can be very adamant, and I want this, and what is correct professionally. This is the distance. This is what we need to adhere to. But the client is insisting. There's this saying that the client is always right. Have you had to disagree with the client and say I don't want that project?
Yes, we do. I normally make it very clear to our clients. We walk away. Money isn't everything. For us, reputation matters more, and risk of life is and making sure the quality is okay. So we're very keen on health and safety on site as well. Proper PPE, proper fall from height protection. People using harnesses, we're very keen on that. Protection during excavation. Unfortunately, none of this is followed in a lot of the developments in parklands and westlands. You'll find people excavating with no protection on the side, then it collapses and someone dies. It's all foreseeable, right? There's something called shoring that needs to be done for excavation and so on and so forth. So yes, we have disagreed with clients, and we've written to them and told them we're not interested. I mean, we're in pursuing further relations on this project, or we want to terminate the contract on this project. And then again, we normally write to authorities and disassociate ourselves from such projects. But we normally even remove these from our profiles.
Another architect would quickly jump into that opportunities.
Yes.
So how do you think we should do? Like, when you said you've seen this, sort of like a peer-to-peer review, you've seen this, it's not working. But the next time you drive through that place, you see whatever you disagreed upon is coming up. So what do we do?
I wish
there's
we
someone
could
else who
control.
would
I
want-
wish we could control all of that. At the end of the day, everyone's an adult and everyone's a professional, so you would trust that they would be able to handle it, or maybe they would have a change of mind with that architect. That's the internal arrangement. But as long as we've done our part, we've communicated with authorities our concerns. I think that's the best we can do. Because even when we disassociate ourselves from the project, we normally give a reason. So we'll say, okay, fine, health and safety was not being handled properly on site, and the client was not agreement on this, so it's just we're no longer on this project. We do like stating the facts on that as well, so it's on record.
Okay.
But yeah, when another architect is taking over from ourselves or any other architect, they need to write to us as a courtesy, and we normally give no objection on that. Right? That's part of the practice notes and what's required from the board as well. Again, there's a lot of etiquette and professionalism that is governed. I mean, is there. It's supposed to be there, basically, within the architectural field, but it's not really everywhere. So only well-established, good professional architects would follow this, but you have a lot of architects who are advertising and not doing things the correct way. So, yeah.
Okay.
A lot of architects don't have ethics. So,
Money, I think they're driven by money first.
yes,
Yeah.
yes.
Okay.
Which is interesting to dive into in terms of your design philosophy, because I've seen that many of your projects have this like fluid grace to them in terms of the elements that you've brought in, whether that's ceiling wise or even with walls, doors. There's something almost Zaha Hadid-esque about it. So what drove that design direction for Grasp?
Okay, so having a background in fine art, I've always been into art and various forms of art: photography, fine art, calligraphy, sculpture, various types, graphic design. So even when I founded the firm, I would normally tell the graduates, I'd find a graduate, they're sketching, little sketches. I'll tell them, no, sketch from the elbow. And what I mean by that is sketch expressively and quick. So sketching from the elbow, when you're sketching from the elbow, you kind of let loose. So when you let loose now, you get more fluid lines and
Interesting.
fine. There's nothing wrong with squares and straight lines. They have their place as well. But it's nice to also introduce some organic shapes within the spaces. Yeah.
And how much harder is that to curate compared to your basic with
It's-
different materials?
It is harder to fabricate, but we are very keen from a technical point of view. So we use parametric design, we use 3D printing, we use digital manufacturing. So we kind of pride ourselves on being at the cutting edge of technology. So we are able to kind of deliver almost anything that we can think of. Yeah.
What do you find lacking in the aesthetic landscape of Nairobi that you think should be done more to just diversify the visual impact that architecture can have?
So I think it's a lack of consideration for neighborhood culture, neighborhood aesthetic,
Okay.
or neighborhood feel rather, and ensuring that your buildings are kind of respecting the human scale. Number one, also kind of distilling the elements. Yeah. So sometimes you'd have buildings with too many elements going on. There's too much going on the facade. Distill it. Get down to the bare minimums, a few forms, a few shapes, a few colors, kind of clean it down a bit. Again, that starts looking a lot neater. So I feel for me, that's what's missing. It's clarity. There's a lot of clutter. So we need to distill it. Yes.
Makes sense.
And how would we? I know we have our own traditional way. We had our own culture, our way of doing things, but I feel like we've lost that touch. So how will we incorporate that to modern design and to have buildings that speak our language, that ours, and they have our identity?
So as I said, it's a very tough one to integrate because obviously, unlike Western cultures, we were kind of forced into urbanism a lot faster.
Okay.
right? So that transition from traditional African architecture to urban architecture was abrupt. So to kind of, it's a mix of all the influences that we've had. We've had colonial influences, but for me, how to kind of integrate African architecture into this, it would be the crafts, right, and the beliefs. So again, how are manyatas decorated? How are homesteads kind of arranged from a privacy gradient point of view? You'd have how are the families sleeping? How were the sons sleeping where were they sleeping within the homestead? So again, these things you can kind of translate them into, for example, multi-generational housing and things like that. So there are ways to do it even from a planning point of view. It doesn't have to be literal, as I said.
Yeah.
You're looking at the principles of how traditional African families lived.
Interesting.
And incorporating craft. So again, let's say on the facade you could have some traditional patterns which are integrated, and those are some of the things that we can kind of integrate: weaving patterns, some of the crafts, and then some of the core principles on privacy, I think that's the key thing on this.
Okay. Let's talk about, I think you mentioned about green buildings, and most people don't really understand what's a green building is. For the purposes of people who just understand building by how they look, what is the concept of green building? Because I think it's a hype word now. Everybody's talking about green building, A-grade green building. What does that really mean?
So obviously I'm the vice chair of the Kenya Green Building Society. Our company ethos, or the tagline for our company, is creating sustainably.
Okay.
Right? And we believe in this quite a bit. So a lot of our projects, most of our projects, we try to make them as sustainable as possible. Now, this comes down to choice of materials, optimizing the design, again. So you're not having windows in your west and your east. You're having windows mainly in your north and south. So you're reducing heat gain in your building, using thermal mass so that the temperature gradients are slower. They're not abrupt. You're using correct shading to shade the glass from the heat gain. Using correct glass as well to cut out acoustics, noise, cut out noise, let's say, from highways. And where you have issues with, for example, air quality, you kind of, you have to use forced ventilation. So using innovative ways like earth tube cooling to pre-cool air. Again, you're reducing the energy load of the building as much as possible. Using photovoltaics, using materials which are low in carbon, right? There's a certain cement which Bamburi has recently launched, which is Duracem, I think. It's again, some of these are more sustainable products. Again, using more sustainable block walling, you have stabilized, soil blocks. You have, quite a few materials that are a bit more sustainable. And then also from water use, so you can use low flow taps, low flow showers, flushing systems that use less water, right? Recycling wastewater as well. So there are many systems. It's multi-pronged. So it's from energy use to material efficiency to indoor air quality. So are you using things which have chemicals in your space?
Okay.
How are you cutting out the dust, particulate matter in your space? And what kind of paint you're using. So there's many items, and there are normally certifications for this, like LEED, EDGE, which is run by IFC. And the project you mentioned earlier, Microsoft, was the first LEED Platinum project in Africa under 4.0. So it's there's a lot of value add, even as developers. For example, a very good example is for apartments. If you're using heat pumps, the energy output, those are way more sustainable compared to using traditional solar water heating systems.
Okay.
And if you use photovoltaics with a heat pump, you'll be laughing, because end of the day, 100 watts pumped into a heat pump, if you put in 100 watts into a heat pump, you're basically getting 400 watts of heating out.
Wow.
Right? So it's a lot more efficient. So these are the kind of technologies that are sustainable, but as well, they're very profitable for the developers. So I think these are all things which sustainable design is sensible design. Okay. It's profitable, it's good for the environment, it's good for profits as well.
Okay.
Yeah.
Do you feel we are having we are giving that enough attention that it deserves?
I think so. I think so. I think generally a lot of buildings are implementing heat pumps and things like that.
Okay.
And even as KGBS, we are really pushing for kind of pushing more developments to be green within the region and within Kenya through partnerships with government. For example, the county, the governor's office was one of the first governor's office to be certified as EDGE certified. We did similar for the Mombasa County as well. So yeah, there are a lot of measures we're taking, we're integrating with at policy level as well to push this. So I believe Kenya is doing okay. And also keep in mind the energy in Kenya is about 80% renewable.
Yeah. That's
So we're not doing too badly. Yeah, but we could do better.
a good point.
So in terms of incentivizing developers, let's say when it comes to sustainable design elements, incorporation, and biophilic design and all of that, do carbon credits come into play here?
Yes, but most developers don't factor that in. Only some do. Yeah. I find carbon credits to be a scapegoat, personally.
Why is that?
I feel like it's a cheat code. Basically, you're kind of trying to buy your way out of, using
Being
more carbon.
irresponsible, yeah.
Yeah. So I'm not very aligned with carbon credits. I think first and foremost, get your house in order and do things to actively reduce your carbon footprint before you resort to carbon credits, basically. So that, in my opinion, you should never actually end up using them. In my opinion, you just go straight to. It's a way for Western organizations to kind of justify their carbon footprint. That's my take. Yeah.
And we've also seen a lot of deforestation in order to facilitate building. It's sad to see because so many people are so attached to the green spaces within Nairobi, within Kenya at large. Of course, it should be protected. Is there some kind of conversation in the process in terms of regulation around this? Is it just becoming something very tricky to implement?
It's tricky to implement. I think there is a certain clause in the new building code. I'd have to look through it again. I don't remember the exact clause. But I believe there was something regarding green spaces. Now, there's obviously ground coverage, which is required by county. And again, that's not being respected by developers, as for the reasons we discussed earlier. So if that was being respected, we would actually have some space for, green areas, retaining our trees. We try to retain as many trees as we can when we're doing projects. We actually, design around buildings as well, around trees as well. So yeah, I mean, again, if all the architects were, had strong principles and are doing the job right, we wouldn't be in this mess. Yeah.
Is there? I have a question. Is there a building in Kenya a famous building that you would secretly love to demolish? Given an opportunity, and you are told, and you secretly, if you had a chance, you will definitely demolish that building.
Gosh, this might get me in trouble.
It must be very famous then.
There are many. If I had my way, half of Nairobi.
We are doing that bad. Are we doing that bad?
If I had my way, half of Nairobi.
Half of Nairobi.
Yeah. But a lot of buildings in pipeline are very badly designed. You'd have, someone's bedroom, the window is through someone else's bedroom.
Yeah.
When you're climbing up the stairs, it's like 1.6 meters high. It's really bad. So some of those definitely would need to be addressed.
Okay, interesting.
I think that's a nice segue into our rapid fire then.
Yeah.
Right? Okay, so we've got a few rapid fire questions for you. But before that, actually, the final grander question is, your approach to extending learning, I think, is really admirable. And I've seen it in person where you really welcome learning in your space and beyond to whoever's interested in gaining more knowledge about architecture, about design, about the entire construction process. So what is your philosophy, your overarching philosophy when it comes to learning more about construction, building, architecture, and how is it that you've ensured that culture is so inculcated into GRASP?
Okay, so we primarily hire local talent, right? As much as possible, we try to hire all our staff currently is from Kenya, and from locally. They're all locally trained, apart from maybe someone who's done their masters or whatever it is. But generally, most of our staff is locally trained. Now, we try to reach out to universities. We partner. We provide, give talks. We provide mentorship, internships as well when we have the space, as much as we can to kind of develop and foster this youth and guide them in the right direction early on, so that we try to bring them early, maybe second, third year, so that by the time they're graduating now, they have a much better picture of the correct way of doing things.
Okay.
Unfortunately, as I said, the current universities, some of them, they really don't encourage free thinking. So we have a major bottleneck, and more the applications that we're getting are just not fit for the industry. So we found that gap, and we said, look, we can't just sit around doing nothing. We have to do something about it. So we went to the universities, and we're trying to engage with them so that we can start early and start mentoring some of these youth.
Okay. Oh. Okay.
That's wonderful. So your rapid fire, are you ready?
You don't think too much. Whatever comes top of mind.
Okay, so number 1, some critics tend to paint architects as egotistical. One word response to that.
Depends.
Depends on.
Some are.
Yeah.
Okay, number 2, 3D printing in building, here to stay or a trend that fades?
I believe in the way it's being projected, it's a fad, but it has its place in elements. Yeah, so mass producing custom designed elements, basically, right? So I think not in entire building, no, but maybe optimized beams or things like that. So I don't think it's not cost effective in Kenya, first of all.
Is that the conversation about precast and all that?
No, 3D printing, like whether you actually.
Would they print
Oh,
like,
it's mini.
would they create something, like the printer makes something out of nothing?
Wow. Okay.
Well, not out of nothing, but yeah.
Not out of fully nothing, but it's like, I think.
They use concrete. It's a special concrete
Yeah.
mixture, but then the concrete mixture is also very specific and things like that. So it's really not sustainable for the local market.
Okay.
It might be feasible for international market, but for Kenya, definitely not.
Plus, I think it
Not at
takes
the
a
moment.
while, right? Like to do
It does, but again, there's a project called 14 Trees that has done it. But I don't believe in the future of that, because also for urban spaces, when you need to go up, that's something for the elements. Let's say if it's precast beams, lintels which are precast, it might help with that. But again, that's also been done efficiently in the traditional manner. So it depends on the use case, I think.
Okay. One phrase from a client which gives you a panic attack mid-build.
Wow.
There are many.
Not so many really, because we handle our jobs well. So yeah, I would say that I've not really had many
Panic attacks.
panic attacks. Yeah.
Are there times when deadline actually beat you? Sometimes we beat deadline, sometimes they beat us.
99% of the time, we normally achieve our timelines.
Oh.
Yeah.
That's good.
That's
Yeah.
like an amazing track record. 99%, yeah.
Yeah, no, we are quite thorough. We are heavily staffed. So we normally provide sufficient staffing for this.
Okay, interesting.
Plus, I think also just being honest with your timelines from the
Yes.
get-go. Because sometimes, have you seen that TikTok where the guy is on the ground, the building is like halfway, and they're telling the person, by tomorrow.
Yeah.
You're going to be in your house.
Yeah.
These stones are being taken away.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I think you have to be, you have to be honest with the client. I've had clients saying, "Oh, I want this done in 3 months." I'm like, "No way." That if you want something quality, it'll take at least 6 months for the design process, so on and so forth. Again, you need to plan. The more you plan, the less issues you'll have on site.
Interesting.
Yeah.
All right, one book every aspiring architect should read at least once.
Form, Space, and Order by D.K. Ching.
Form, space, and order.
Form, space, and order. Which room in a building is your least favorite to plan and execute?
Least favorite to plan? None. I enjoy all spaces. So, yeah.
Which world-famous building would you secretly love to see demolished just so you could get a crack at redoing that site?
World famous building. Wow. Trying to think.
I mean, I think of like the Burj Khalifa or something. But
No, Burj is okay, but although there's a lot of wasted volume in it. Yeah, but I'm not a big fan of ultra high-rise buildings. Again, I find them egotistical, right? I think just designing good, you don't need to go that high. I'm not for doing a 100-story building just because you can. It should make sense. So, yeah, it kind of pushed the limits of what humans can do, which is fine. But I think that should be it. I don't think we should now keep on competing on that. Yeah.
All right. An alternative career you think you would have pursued if not for architecture?
Matte painting.
Wow.
Yeah, matte painting is basically it's a kind of art form used within cinema. So there's an artist called Dylan Cole, and I would love to have been a matte painter in my alternate life. Yeah.
All right. And finally, complete this sentence. Success to me now means dash.
Choosing the kind of projects that we can take and ensuring that they leave impact and are not just, any other projects.
Interesting. I mean, it's been such a deep dive into so many aspects of building, architecture, construction. Thank you for being with us.
Thank you. I think my key takeout is we need to work together. I think regulatory framework is very important. You can be very good, you can do the right thing, but if we are not following the right ways of doing things, then we'll have the issues that we've been experiencing recently.
Yeah. I think all parties need to do their part. The individuals, the professionals, as well as the bodies. Everyone needs to do their part for there to be, a better built environment.
Yeah, because what I've learned is it's a matter of life and death. So, like you said, a doctor will be held responsible, but if a building like this collapses, it's 100 people. So it is important that we also look at it using those lenses. Yeah, thank you. So it has been a wonderful episode today. We've learned a lot. It's different from what we are used to, and it has been, technical learning on the ins and outs. And I hope our audiences get something out of this. If you have any questions, if people would like to get in touch with you, how will they connect with you?
We have a website.
Okay.
There's an email over there, so you can reach out to the email there.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you. And it's a wrap.